which could be interesting, which leads to the last story, I guess,
Hmm.
of the day, also about Amazon. And I'm really curious your take on this. And the news is that Andy Jassy, the CEO of Amazon, has come back out now publicly and said, and I forgot what the time frame is, but very soon, I think at the beginning of the next year,
Hmm.
that everybody needs to be back in the office full time. No more remote work, as a matter of course or as a matter of standard practice. And that, we've certainly seen that at JP Morgan Chase and a few others, but I think this is the first major tech company that has gone that hard. I could be wrong on that, but clearly they're one of the most influential. And I think it's really, really interesting and may exacerbate or maybe speak to the fact that they don't feel like they're in such a fight for talent that they can get away with doing that. I was curious what your take is on this.
Well, it's definitely been a trend over the past year or so that the likes of Google and Meta and Salesforce have all asked people to come in, if not every day, at least 2 or 3 days a week instead of 0 days a week. And I think there's a couple of reasons for it. One is that there is pressure just from a real estate perspective to bring these workers back to these urban areas that had been built out for those workers, just the restaurants and dry cleaners and uh, whatever shoe repair services that had been in these offices or in these areas that now are threatened to go out of business. I think that's one little piece of it. But I think the most important part is honestly, some of these companies are trying to lay off employees and find ways to push employees out without having to actually declare a layoff or to do any other thing that might be seen as attacking workers. If you instead put in this policy and 10% of your most highly paid labor that you might not actually need right now in house ends up leaving, that might be a win-win for everybody involved.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting. Of course, they're couching it in the need for collaboration and culture and trying to be the world's biggest startup and all of that. And I look at I think there's a degree of to which I agree with that in that I know I get sort of an energy boost when I come together and I'm physically co-located with people, but I don't know that it's necessary all the time. And clearly, I mean, they were one of them. I think they were on a 3 day a week mandate, is what they were on, and so this is going back. And like I said, I'm not sure if they're the only ones, but what I think is interesting more than anything is that if there is any group, at least from a technology perspective, that can manage remote work, it is tech companies, right? I mean,
A cloud
we
company,
spend most
yes.
right. We have the technology. We spend most of our time sitting at a laptop. We're doing that work anyway. And so I do find it interesting. And I do think you could be right. I think we're definitely seeing a flip of the labor market. Um, and I personally, as someone who's worked remotely for 25 years, I actually think it's not the right move overall, but I guess we'll see. I think we may be seeing tech companies moving more in this direction, and I I think it's fascinating because I was in the camp that said the pandemic had permanently shifted this dynamic, and
Mhm.
I guess I was wrong.
Yeah, I think it's a stupid power move, quite frankly. I have seen enough startups in my day that are fully or mostly remote. They could be headquartered out of Montana or Israel or Singapore or whatever. And they'll say, yeah, we have 3 people in our main office and then another 17 who are, I honestly don't even know where. And we are working together on this thing. It is extremely common in the tech world. And if you really want to be a tech startup or the biggest tech startup, you should act like actual tech startups in the modern world, which honestly are distributed and can be managed well on a distributed fashion. I think people are either saying at Amazon, I don't know how to manage a distributed team, in which case you probably shouldn't be a manager in the first place, or I'm playing some sort of other power move because it is good for me politically. But this is not something that is actually good from a work productivity perspective. The end, full
So I,
stop.
so I know we're running long, but I'm really curious your take because those are strong statements. And I've been a long fan of Andy Jassy and a long fan of Amazon, of AWS in particular, which of course Andy Jassy headed up until he became the CEO of Amazon overall. So what's your take on this? Is that, have they lost their mojo on this and are just wrongheaded, or do you think he's authentic in that this is really about collaboration and culture?
I honestly feel like this is something political that I have no visibility to. Maybe he's getting pushed by his board. Maybe there's a bunch of middle to high level executives who are insisting that they need their people in the office for some reason. All I know is that in the real startup world, this is not an issue. Real startups look for talent wherever they can get them, and you create processes and feedback mechanisms to manage your remote team. And it's not difficult, and there's been a long held playbook for this type of management at this point. So I just don't buy the excuse that they're providing. Maybe there is a real reason that is economically sound or is important from a business perspective, but being the world's largest startup is not it.
Well, what I think is funny is going back to the last article that we were covering about the risk of repatriation of workloads. The big holdup, in my opinion, has been having the talent that actually understood it, and they may end up releasing intentionally or inadvertently a bunch of qualified talent that can help these large enterprises do this
Yep.
repatriation. So we'll see how that plays out. But it's going to be another interesting week as always.
Yeah. Well, at least we got to end on some hot takes. And
Exactly.